Let's begin. We are on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Bet. At the top, roughly a little bit less than halfway down the page, by the two dots, Ochlim Vishotim. If you're following in the art scroll in English, it is on 11b1, right at the end of the English, okay? Ochlim Vishotim Mishachashecha. A person can eat and drink from when it gets dark. Now, what's it talking about over here? Which night, which dark? We're talking about the dark, the night before the fast, okay? So just as an example, so we're clear, there's only two fasts that we fast from the evening before. They are Kippur and Tisha B'Av. Ray, just move to the side so I could get to see a beautiful face. Or the other side. There you go. I'm looking at me. I want to see a beautiful face. Okay. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Zera said, in the name of Rav Huna. So this is the Gemara explaining the line of the Mishnah. Rabbi Zera said in the name of Rav Huna, Yachid shekibel alav ta'anit. Let's say a person has, who's a single person, an individual, who accepted on himself to fast for whatever reason, okay? Afilu achal v'shata kol halayla. Let's say he ate and drank the whole night. He went to the restaurant evening before, he's fasting on Monday, Sunday night, he's partying, he's drinking, he's no problem. Eat the whole entire night until the morning. So long as he doesn't eat after the morning, lemacharu mitpalel tefilat ta'anit. The next day, he could pray tefilat ta'anit. What is tefilat ta'anit? Rashi says, mitpalel anenu. Okay, a person could pray, he could say the tefillah of anenu, that we're the answer us because we're on a fast day. You guys could put your cameras on, by the way. It's more than fine. All right, Jonah and Morris, if you'd like. If you don't want, you don't have to. All right. Says the Gemara, Lemachar hu mitpalel, the next day, he prays tefillah ta'anit, okay? What happens if lan beta'anito, right? What happens if he went to sleep while fasting? Enu mitpalel shel ta'anit, he does not pray the tefillah of ta'anit after, before he eats. So let's just see what Rashi says. Lan beta'anito. Look at Rashi for 1 second. You see, it's right across, maybe a little bit less from Rabbeinu Gershom on the side. Exactly halfway down the page in Rashi. Lan beta'anito, be'oto ta'anit shekibel alav, that ta'anit that he accepted on himself, shelo achal be'motza'e ta'anito. He didn't eat the evening at the end of his ta'anit. Ve'lan kol oto halayla l'shem ta'anit ad haboker. He sleeps on the ta'anit.
It's an extra day?
Until the morning, okay?
He fasted the whole day and then he's fasting till the following day?
Yeah, either that way or he starts that way, either or, okay? So, eno mitpalel shel ta'anit, because then he doesn't do shel ta'anit. Now, he doesn't pray the next day a ta'anit. In other words, it's not a ta'anit what he did. Now, the Gemara is actually going to try and figure out what this means. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef explains, Ma'ika savar Rav Huna. What does Rav Huna understand? What is he trying to say? What does he hold? How come the guy should not say anenu in the next morning, the tefillah ta'anit? Svira le, because he holds en mit'anin l'shaot. Because he holds that there's no such thing as a fast which is dedicated specifically for a few hours. The only type of ta'anit you could have is the full block of the day. So therefore, in a scenario where the person has not done that, then there's no ta'anit. Is that the reason why? Or dilma, or maybe he holds that mit'anin l'shaot. Actually, a person does fast. There is such a thing as fasting for hours. It's just that it is a ta'anit, it is a fast, except that the prayer for fasting was not said on a fast of hours. So to be clear, one more time, does he hold that there's no such thing as a fast for hours? Or does he hold that there's no such thing as a prayer of a fast for hours? But there is such a thing as a fast for hours. What's the nafkamina? Whether if a person should do the fast without the prayers, or if, as an example, let's say a person says, I'm taking on myself a ta'anit from breakfast until lunch. Does that thing exist? Does he have an obligation to follow through on that which he said? Okay?
So are you saying two things right now? Are you saying one, he has an obligation to fast because he committed to fast, and then B, it's not a fast if he doesn't pray?
So let's go back to what we started with.
Yes.
The original statement was, if a person fasts through the night and then he's there in the morning, but he hasn't fasted the rest of the day.
If he fasts through the night, but he's
Yeah.
sleeping, so it
Yes.
doesn't count, or it does count.
He now continues to fast till the next, we said, like till the next morning.
Okay?
Yeah. So
But
I
he's
prayed
not partying.
I prayed Taanit. No, first night I partied. Okay, let's just do it. Let's do it in a sequence. First night I partied. I woke up in the morning, fasted the whole day. So do I pray Tefillat Taanit? Yes. Absolutely. Now I decide, you know what? I'm going to carry on this fast. I'm not hungry right now. I could keep
never
this.
ate?
He didn't eat.
Okay.
I could keep this going.
Went to sleep. Woke up.
Carries it next morning now.
Okay?
Now does he say Tefillat Taanit the next day?
No.
After he said it the day before.
Yeah, but he's not accepting on himself to finish that Ta'anit. He just happens to still be fasting. So he's gonna break it at some stage during that day. Would he say Anenu before he breaks it? No. Now the Gemara asks, why is that? Is the reason because he's now fasted for a certain number of hours, but not and doesn't plan to fast the whole day. So there's no such thing as a partial fast. That's option number one. Option number two is, no, there is such a thing as a ta'anit for sha'ot, for hours as opposed to a whole day. But the question is there a prayer, is there a tefillah on that kind of a that kind of a fast, of the sha'ot? So either one of those reasons could be the reason why Rav Huna told us, lan b'ta'anito doesn't fast. Yes, Jonah.
Does the person have to have intention to break the fast after Shachrit? Like the 30, like right after he finishes praying, that's why you say he wouldn't say Adenu, or he doesn't know when he's ending his fast?
We're gonna get into that.
Okay.
Okay? So let's continue. So we don't know. What are the possible reasons for Rav Huna? We have two reasons. Amar le Abaye. Abaye said, Rav Yosef, you just gave me two reasons. Le'olam kasava Rav Huna mit'anin l'shaot. Really, he holds that there is such a thing as fasting for hours. V'hamit'aneh l'shaot mitpalel tefilat ta'anit. So both of your reasons, I'm going to say, are not the reason. He could hold that there is a fast for hours. And he could hold that you make a prayer when you're fasting for hours. So why would he say that you don't make the prayer in the morning? Shani hacha, here it's different. The reason why Rav Huna's example, when you made the fast at a later stage on a whim to continue your fast, see, we don't say it. Di'ika sha'ot dilelia de lo kabil ale me'ikara. Because there are hours there that he's fasted that he never really accepted on himself. And if a person, there's your answer, Jonah, did not accept on themselves a new fast, right? So then the fact that you fasted without accepting on it, that doesn't have the import, the consequence of a fast to say anenu. Let me give you an example for this, because I always say this. Do you ever have a day where you're so busy, you didn't put a thing in your mouth?
Yeah.
So imagine you're like, Baruch Hashem, I had a fast today, I'm going to say anenu. No. The anenu, the concept of a fast, is that I decided I was going to do something, and I'm aware and conscious and focused on what I'm doing. It's there for a purpose because of mourning, because of teshuvah, because of whatever. And on the back of that, then I say anenu. I always say a second thing also. The minute you know there's a fast, right, everyone's going majnun. Like you have these fasts when the day is short, ends 4 o'clock in the afternoon. People getting up 5 in the morning to eat their bagel and have their coffee before. Half the time of my life, I don't eat until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Happens all the time. I never once got up in the morning to get myself early, have a bagel, 5 a.m., wake up, go back to sleep. It's only because I know that I'm having a fast and I'm hungry.
Right.
So that's, I think, also part of the reason why an accepted fast is a real and significant fast, because a person wants to eat because they know that they can't, and then they therefore consciously withhold it from themselves. So we have 3 possible answers for why Rav Huna would have said on this lan b'ta'anito guy that he does not say ta'anit, the prayer of the ta'anit in the day. The Gemara now tries to ascertain which of these are we going with. Are we going with Abaye? Are we going with one of the 2 reasons of Rav Yosef? The Gemara says as follows: Mar ukva That's his name. Mar Ukva ikla leginzak. He went to the city called Ginzak. Ba'u mineh, they asked him, mit'anim l'sha'ot or en mit'anim l'sha'ot? Does a person fast for hours? Is there such a thing or not? Lo have biyadeh. He did not know the answer. Then they continued to ask him.
I mean, it sounds like this guy just walked into a town and people just started asking him a question. And
Hazi,
I wasn't ready
he's
for
a,
this.
he's
I
a,
have no idea.
Mar Ukva is one of the Amoraim, big Sadiq, big Talmid Chacham. Okay, we learn the laws actually of fasting. I believe are from Mar Ukva. The laws actually of waiting in milk and meat are from Mar Ukva.
Oh,
okay.
That's what that says it in the Torah clearly.
In the Torah, it says about eating meat and milk together.
Yes.
But the idea that we wait after meat to milk, the Gemara relates about Mar Ukva. Okay. Says the Gemara, they asked him, "Kankanim shel nochrim." When someone has a kankan is any sort of vessel that stores something, a jug, a bottle, a pot, but generally it means it's used for wine or oil, the examples are. So you have kankanim shel nochrim that belong to non-Jews, and they use them for storing wine, that's obviously yayin nesech. Asurin umutarim. Are Jewish people allowed to use those same bottles or not? Because it has the taste of the wine in the walls of the vessel. So,
This is the McAllen question.
sorry?
Is this the McAllen question?
Yes and no. The McAllen question is a complicated question. One day maybe we could study the whole 30-page teshuvah that there is on it. All right? Over a bottle of McAllen.
I think we should pause and get to that.
I think we'll start with spoiler alert, mutar. Let's start at the beginning. Okay, let's go. So the halakha is, lo have biyadeh. He did not have the answer to be able to answer them on the spot. They continue, they asked him, Bameh shimesh Moshe, kol shiv'at yimei hamiluim. What, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, for the first 7 days of the Mishkan, until the 8th day, when Aharon took over, he taught them how to service. He taught the Kohanim how to do everything. You find this interesting? He told the Kohanim how to do all the service. He did every korban. He prepared the ketoret. He did this, he did that. He did everything. And he showed them how it should be done. So during those 7 days, Moshe Rabbeinu had the halacha of a Kohen Gadol. But he wasn't the Kohen Gadol, Aharon was. So what did he wear? Did he wear the clothing of a regular Kohen? Or did he wear the clothing of a Kohen Gadol? These guys ask tough questions, okay? He's like, if you would have asked me about the milk spoon, I got that one, okay? Lo have biyadeh. He didn't have an answer to this question. Azal v'sha'ir be'midrasha. Mar Ukva then went and he asked these questions be'midrasha, in the Bet Midrash. Amrule, they said to him, Hilcheta, the halacha is mit'anin l'sha'ot. Halacha is, there is such a thing as fasting for hours. U'mitpaleli tefillah ta'anit. And there is such a tefillah that a person prays, even if it's only a ta'anit of hours. V'hilcheta, and the halacha is also kankanim shel nochrim, the vessels of the nochrim, of non-Jews, la'achar 12 chodesh mutarim. After 12 months of being wine free, mutarim, they are now mutar, because the taste at that point forgives. But during the time of during the 12 months of usage, so then there's a process that we do called shiyah, where we take water, you put water in it for a period of day, 24 hours, then you dump it, you put more water, then you put more water. There's a process by which we do it, but of course, those halachot are not always the case. All right, so this also is the basis for some interesting halachot when you have cases where people inherited sets of china from a grandfather or a grandmother. They're not so sure exactly how kosher they kept. So you see this concept also gets used in certain cases in halakha, where if it waited 12 months, so then we're more lenient about what to do with it, okay? But again, ask your local Orthodox rabbi each and every one of these cases. So after 12 months, mutarim, so they gave Mar Ukva the answers to these questions that have been asked. What did he wear? The Gemara answers, Bechaluk lavan. He used a specific white, what's it called? A garment, a robe that was made specially for that purpose. How do we know that he didn't use the clothing of the Kohanim, which was also white? How do we know that the Gemara does not mean that? We know that it's a special garment made specifically for that, because it would have said the clothing of a Kohen Hediot. It doesn't say that. It says Chaluk Lavan. It was made specially for that time. Rav Kahana Matni, Rav Kahana taught Bechaluk Lavan she'en lo imra, that did not have a folding over at the bottom. So it's almost like it was something that was unfinished. Okay? I just want to read you at the bottom. Look at Rashi. Rashi says something very interesting. Safa metargemin an imra. Safa means the edge, the border. That's how we translate it into Aramaic, is imra. Klomar, to tell you, tachuv hayam michut echad kol hachaluk. It was one string had been kind of woven through all the beged. V'lo kebegadim shelanu shebatei yadayim medubakim bebeged aguf betfira kedei shelo yechashdu shem beoto safa otzi ma'ot hakodesh. They made sure that it was not folded over. It was sewn in a way different to most begadim. It had no hem. Why? That the people should not say, in that hem, he took out money from Kodesh, from the Mishkan. Wild. Like it says, V'yitem neki'im Hashem Yisrael. It should be clean in the eyes of God and in the eyes of the Jewish people. Ya Eni.
It's amazing.
The life and times of a rabbi of the Jewish people. Okay.
Right.
The Gemara continues.
Sparrow.
Yeah, unbelievable, right? You know, look, I have nothing under here. You know, the magician does this. Nothing here, right? You know, etc., etc. Okay. Ha de Amrit. The Gemara continues on Yud Bet Amud Aleph. Ha de Amrit. This that you said, mit'anim l'shaot. So now we have a statement saying that the halacha is that there is something like this that you could accept on yourself, that you fast for hours. The ha de Amrit mit'anim l'shaot. V'hu shelo ta'am klum ad ha'erev. That what you said, that you can fast for hours, it's that the halakha is that a person did not have anything until nightfall. But let's say a person asked, let's say they ate in the morning, they had a bagel, okay? Or they ate in the afternoon, and then they're going to fast now from that point until the evening. That's not a fast.
Yeah.
That's what you do every day. You fast between breakfast and lunch. Then you fast eat lunch and dinner. Could a guy say, I'm accepting on myself a Taanit from now 10:36 until 10:37 while I'm studying Torah? That's not a fast. You ate already. Right? It's not a thing. So it's something like that. If you already ate in the day, then to accept a partial fast, there's no validity to something like that. Okay?
And the reason why someone would accept a partial fast for themselves is because they're trying to pray for something or get something. What's the reason?
That's the purpose.
Sorry?
What's the
What's the purpose?
What do you mean?
What's the reason why someone would want to fast?
For partially?
No.
In general.
Oh, in general. So let's say a person had a bad dream. We had an example. Let's say we have a situation where a person sees that there's no rain, so he's deciding to accept on himself. We said that a person, if they know that they could handle the fast, so then it's not a bad thing for them to accept the fast on themselves for the tzibur, or things like that. Yeah, person's having issues. Let's say a person wants for teshubah. You know, let's say a person felt they dropped tefillin or sefer Torah as an example. A person could have a situation where they ate something that's not kosher, so they feel like they have an obligation to fix that in the realm of food. So people can take on ta'aniyot for various reasons.
And there's no like set in stone time period for this. It's just it's a day, it's a couple hours. It's it's.
No,
Sorry?
It's clearing you the period of the time. Now, actually, it's clearing you what is the minimum, it's a good question.
Yeah. So I want to just point out, number one, we started with the idea that a person can't eat before. But the question is, what about eating after? Because the statement of Gemara actually extends beyond what we just said. The Mishnah should really say, if I accepted a ta'anit for 6 hours, so that means that I did not, v'hu shelo ta'am klum ad, it should say ad ta'anit.
Right.
Over here it says ad ha'erev. Which means
there's no partial fast then.
Which means that if you accepted from breakfast to lunch, You can't eat before, and you can't eat after until the night. So then it's not a partial fast. Amale Abaye said to Rav Chizda, Hatanit ba'aliyatahu. That's not a fast of shaot. That's not a fast of hours. You just fasted the whole day.
Right.
Gemara says, no, tzricha. You need this teaching of Rav Chizda about a fast for Taanit, shaot. The imlich imluche. What happens if a scenario where a person decided they changed their mind from what they were doing before, right? In the beginning, he decided he was going to fast until Hatzot, okay? Then he decides he's going to change his mind, he's going to fast for the whole day, okay? So Rav Chizda holds, right, that the first part of the day, it's not a Ta'anit, right? Because it would not be a Ta'anit because it's Ta'anit l'sha'ot. The second part of the day, where you didn't eat before, and now you're not going to eat after, valid fast. So in a scenario where I did not yet eat, and now I decide I want to do Ta'anit Sha'ot, one would imagine that would now be considered a Ta'anit Sha'ot. But in either case of Rav Chizda, you're going to have to fast the whole day. Okay? So what did Rav Chizda help us? Before Rav Chizda, the only way to have a Ta'anit would be to decide the day before you're going to fast the whole day. According to Rav Chizda, now, if a person changes their mind midway through, and he decides he's going to fast, Hatzot, from Hatzot, he's like, I'm feeling great. It's only half the day. I didn't eat anything today. I feel like I can make the rest of the day. I'm going to turn the rest of the day into a fast.
Yeah, but did they...
According to Rav Chizda, now you have something. Without Rav Chizda, there is no Ta'anit l'sha'ot. Do you catch that?
That's a good one.
No.
Morris, you look like you didn't catch that.
I didn't really catch that.
Okay.
I thought that you have to state your intentions the night before and not eat.
So,
Right?
so we did not say that. You said that from your previous knowledge of that issue. Did we find that yet in the Gemara? No.
I
Right.
read it in the explanations down below.
So maybe because you read ahead, but that the Gemara has not yet said this at all.
Okay.
Okay.
But we can.
But up until this point, at this point, what we're talking about is a scenario where a person accepts on themselves a fast l'sha'ot. Is that a fast or not? The Gemara first thought maybe it isn't, and that's why Rav Huna said what he said, according to Rav Yosef. The Gemara then says that the halacha is actually, there is such a thing as a ta'anit l'sha'ot. On that, the Gemara brings this expression from Rav Chizda, that even though there is such a thing as a Ta'anit Sha'ot, practically, who cares? You have to fast the whole thing. The Gemara asks that question. The Gemara answers, it's true you have to fast the whole thing. Otherwise, it's not really a fast. Right. Like the minimum amount of fast that you're going to feel is going to be a fast of the day.
Yeah.
So then, in what way is this fast of the hours a thing? In what way is it relevant if there's going to be a practical halakha that it's not a fast if you ate anyway? And the answer is, what if I accepted a fast on myself in the middle of the day, I'd change my mind, I'd say, I'm going to fast today. So since Ta'anit Sha'ot is a thing, I fulfilled that I didn't eat today just haphazardly, just for no reason, but I still did it, okay? And I'm not going to eat now until the night because I accepted midday till the end of the night. So what will turn out is that the only kind of Ta'anit Sha'ot is from a point till the end of the day. So let's say a person has a Ta'anit Sha'ot, they decide they're going to fast from the morning until lunch.
It's no good.
It's no good.
You don't need to go till...
Because you
But
still
if
need...
you didn't eat breakfast and you're at lunchtime and you didn't eat, you could take it all the way down.
Correct.
Take it all the way through.
And that's what Rav Chizda is teaching us.
Basically,
Right.
you can't start the day you're eating
Right.
anything, and then whenever you
Huh?
want during the middle of the day,
And
you
it's
can
not
change your
a
intention.
Sha'ot.
No, it is a Ta'anit Sha'ot. Because the other part I didn't accept on myself as a Ta'anit.
You don't get credit for the morning part, basically.
It just happens to be, exactly. So in other words, what Rav Chizda is teaching us is that there's a possibility of accepting a fast middle of the day for the rest of the day. Okay?
We say eat. Is it eat and drink? Are you not allowed to have water? Or are you allowed to have water?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No,
So
there's,
zero.
no, zero. Okay? Let's carry on.
It's really a question about intention.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an
Yes.
intention.
Attention about focus, like we talked about downstairs, okay? Always happens that what we talk about downstairs comes up in the Gemara upstairs. The Gemara then continues. Now that we understand the purpose of Rav Chizda's chidush. V'amar Rav Chizda, Kol ta'anit, shelo shaka alav hama, any ta'anit where the sun did not set on it, okay? So in other words, before the sun set you ate. Lav shmeh ta'anit. It doesn't have the halacha of a ta'anit. It's not called a ta'anit. Okay? So, what is it? What is he trying to communicate to us here? It sounds almost exactly the same thing, right? To a certain extent, what the Gemara over here is adding is that, let's say I fasted from the morning until the afternoon and I intended to fast the rest of the day, but then I broke my fast before nightfall. It actually undoes the fast of the morning. So it's a similar concept, but it says it more expressly. Okay? The Gemara then continues. Metve, we're going to ask for a Braita, for a Mishnah. Anshe Mishmar, you have the people of the Mishmar. What are the people of the Mishmar? There used to be turns of the Leviim. They would take the turns guarding the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash. Or you had Kohanim that they each took turns where there would be a time where the Kohen would do the service in the Beit HaMikdash. They would be the ones that would bring in the Korbanot, etc., etc. So there were packs of Korbanot, of Kohanim, and they took turns being in the Beit HaMikdash. If you're a Kohen, it's not like your full-time job is all year round being in the Beit HaMikdash. You have other duties at home, but your turn in the Beit HaMikdash, you're one of 24 mishmarot. Okay? So people that are anshe mishmar, mit'anim v'lo mashlimin. They fast, but they don't finish the fast. They're not mashlim. Okay? Now, why are they not mashlim? What's the reason for that? Okay? How come why do you think that they wouldn't fast? I think we already have the answer. What's the answer?
Mishmer.
Sorry?
The length of the mishmer. Because they have a mishmer.
So therefore what?
It's like the people who were studying Torah, they couldn't fast.
Excellent. So it diminishes their ability to do melechet shamayim, the work of heaven, like we saw earlier in the Gemara. So mit'anim v'lo mashlim. Another reason why they could not finish is that there's certain korbanot that need to be eaten by the kohanim. Right? In fact, if the kohen doesn't eat his portion, the korban is not done. The language of the Gemara is the kohanim ochlim uba'alim mitkaprim, and the owners get their kapara. So you don't have an option to not eat from the korban. Okay? So there'll be scenarios where a person won't be able to fast. What would be a scenario? Korbanot have a time limit as to when you're allowed to eat them. Some of them, as you see, if you ever were there for korbanot in the morning for shacharit, ne'echalim yom echad or shnei yamim v'layla echad, etc. Different korbanot have different time frames. So let's say you have a korban and it needs to be eaten before nightfall of today, and I have my fast.
Well, you should have planned better, honestly.
No, I don't know. It's his korban, not mine.
Oh,
okay.
No, my wife likes to eat the meat hot, and she's going.
Mit'anim v'lo mashlimin. They do a ta'anit and they don't finish. And yet, even though they don't finish, that means that they eat before nightfall. What do we just say that they do? Mit'anim. It's called fasting. Right. So how can it be Rav Hizda taught us that if you eat before nightfall, right, that's not considered ta'anit? Answers the Gemara, hatam l'se'ure nafshe be'almahu. Those fast, those were not ta'aniyot. Those were only in order to be able to bring some form of yisurin on themselves, to bring some form of suffering in some way. But this halacha was not the halachic element of anenu, and therefore, with regards to the original question of Rav Huna, like they don't make the beracha of anenu, so it's not a halacha of a fast. But mit'anim, so why in the world would someone do a ta'anit that's not called a ta'anit? Do a ta'anit that's not accepted as a ta'anit. Do a ta'anit that's not, that you can't say the tefillah of the ta'anit. So we already explained, because when Am Yisrael has a fast, or if there's a public problem, and you're joining with them in their distress, what do we say? Zocheh v'ro'eh, he also gets to see the salvation of the people. We saw all the berachot that someone who participates in the suffering of the Sibur gets. So a Kohen that has no option of finishing his fast, mit'anim. I think we learned from here some other halachot as well, which perhaps are not as relevant to this specific halacha, but still connect with this idea. Mechila. What is that? Let's say, as an example, you have a patient in the hospital, and the doctor tells him, look, you're going to have to eat every 6 hours, or every 3 hours, or every hour. The guy says, Rabbi, I know it's Tisha B'Av, but I'm going to have to break my fast anyway in an hour. Is there any point in me fasting? The answer is absolutely. You're mit'aneh until the hour, and then you're mit'aneh until the hour, mit'aneh until the hour. Even though you're breaking your fast repeatedly. Why? Same like the Kohanim. It's not a fast. You didn't do Tisha B'Av, but you were present and you were mit'abel as much as you could along with them. One of the halachot as well that we say from this is that even a person that can eat, he doesn't eat sweets, he doesn't eat fine delicacies, even if he's not obligated to fast. Certain quantities is a different thing. That's to not break the fast. Yes.
In the korban steak.
Sorry.
Korban.
Yes.
Steak.
The korban is a mitzvah on him to eat. He doesn't have an option. That's not a delicacy, it's an obligation. Right?
It just so happens to be.
Happens to taste good, but he has an obligation. What if, as an example, a person is having an insulin attack? So the only thing he can eat is sweets. What do you mean he's eating sweets? Yeah, but he's saving his life. Yeah, he has to eat it. Okay. The Gemara continues. Tashema. So therefore we've fended off the question that was posed. Tashma, the Gemara says, come and let's study. De'amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Sadok. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Sadok, says, Ani mibnei banav shel Sinaav ben Binyamin. I come from a long line of descendants, Rabbi Eliezer ben Sadok, from the tribe of Binyamin, the son of Binyamin's, one of the sons of his name was Sinaav, and I'm descended from them. Upam ahat, Hal Tisha B'Av liot b'Shabbat. Tisha B'Av fell out on Shabbat. V'dachinu le'achal b'Shabbat. So they pushed it off to Sunday. Anytime you have a fast that's pushed off to Sunday, it's weaker. V'hit'aninu bo ve'lo hishlamnuhu. He fasted on that day, on the Sunday. Ve'lo hishlamnuhu. He didn't finish all the way till the end of the fast. Why? P'nei sheyom tov shelanuhu. Because the 10th of Av, Yom Tov Shelanu, it's our holiday. Okay? What does it mean? It's Yom Tov Shelanu. How come the 10th of Av is Yom Tov Shelanu? So the Gemara actually describes that there's a specific family. This family, the family of Sinaav, is brought down other places that they had a job that they would do for the Beit HaMikdash. And since they had a job to do with the Beit HaMikdash on that day, okay, so that day was for them a personal holiday. And since they had a personal holiday, so the halacha was that the fast that was nidche, which is weaker, they don't have an obligation to complete, okay? And yet, you still see that he calls it, we fasted, okay? Got it? The Gemara answers, so similar type of a question. The Gemara answers, Hatam nami l'sa'ure nafshe be'almahu. It doesn't mean that they actually fasted because they had no obligation to fast, because it was a holiday for them. Because it was nidche and it was pushed, they had no obligation to fast. So why were they fasting?
To be with the people that
the people that are fasting. So therefore, you can't prove anything from the fact that he says hit'aninu v'lo yishlamnu, because we have the same answer. Tashma. Rav Chizda, Da'amar Rav Yochanan taught, right? Ha b'Taanit, ehe b'Taanit ad she'avo lebeti. Rav Yochanan said, sometimes he was wont to say, I'm going to fast, okay, until I get to my house. Now, that's a very small amount of time, one would think, okay? And then you see, even though he would say, ehe b'Taanit ad she'avo lebeti, right? Even though it's such a small thing, still he says b'Taanit. So you see, he's eating when he gets home, which is the opposite of what his dad says, that you have to fast until nightfall, and still he called it a Taanit. Hatam, the Gemara says, l'shamute nafshe meben isiyahu da'avar. Okay? Why did he? What was the reasons why he said that? He had a reason why he would say, "I'm not going to eat until we go," because that way he wouldn't have to eat if at the nasi, at the people's tables that were inviting him. Okay, but really this obligation was not a concept of a ta'anit. It was more of a statement he was saying to get out of something. So let's say, as an example, barbanan, a person's in a house where they don't eat kosher food, and he says, "Look, I'm fasting until I get home." Right? Only reason why he's saying it is so he doesn't have to put himself in a situation of not eating something which is doubtful. He's doubtful of the kashrut. So when he says "Ehe b'ta'anit," he doesn't mean I'm in a halachic ta'anit. He means I'm in a practical fast.
In intermittent
So
fasting.
intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
By the way, it saves you a lot. I'll tell you that much. Restrictions. Yes. The other day I was at the Safra marketplace, 900 people. Everyone's kosher. But could you imagine I tasted from everybody that ate here? I'll be in Jahash. So Baruch Hashem, thank God, it happened to be my intermittent fasting hours. So I said, Mechila, ani b'ta'anit. I didn't say those words. But that would not be a question on Rav Hizda. Because I said Ehe b'ta'anit on a partial fast. Why? Because all I'm saying is I'm trying to get out of not eating right now, so I'm saying I'm fasting. Okay? Carry on. The Gemara continues. Okay? So now we're going to go back to what we said earlier on. Amar Shmuel. This is Morris, where you come in. I just want to say, Morris, it's very cool the way the screen is set up, because in the top left-hand corner there's a duct, but it looks like that's the battery of this phone call. I keep looking and I'm like, oh gosh, phone's about to die. The empty battery, and it's just an air conditioning duct. Okay, let's carry on. This is what Morris pointed out earlier. Amar Shmuel. Any ta'anit that you did not accept on yourself from before the day, okay? Lav shmei ta'anit. It's not considered a ta'anit. So you can't decide in the morning, like Rav Hizda said earlier, okay? You can't decide on a whim, I'm going to finish the fast. Like we said earlier. You have to accept it from the day before. The Gemara asks, what happens if a person actually fasts? Mai. He didn't accept the fast, but he fasted. Mai. What's the halakha? Does it accept? Does it fulfill the? So my question is, what do you think the Gemara is asking here? Mai. What do you mean you fasted? Who cares what it is?
No, it's related
Do you
to
say-
the
do you say-
intention. The
Oh,
intention.
excellent. Question number one
Yeah, because you wake up in the morning, is decide, now I'm going to fast.
does it have a halakha of a fast?
Right.
That's question number one. With regards to
Do you say
saying
Anenu?
tefillat anenu. That's question number one. Question number two, another example is, let's say I decided I'm going to have 3 fasts, like they're fasting 3 days for the rain. But the person did not accept on himself that this is going to be a fast. And he just sat, but he never accepted ta'anit on himself. What's the halakha? Could he count that as one of the 3 that he's obligated to fast? Okay? Amar Rabbi Bar Shila. Rabbi Bar Shila says, Dame lemapuche de mal yazika. He's considered like mapuche is what they would use to fan the fire, the big accordion thing. Sorry?
Bellows.
The bellows. They would take the accordion, that it looks like an accordion. You have the 2 handles. Basically, you open it up, it fills with air, and you expel the air, and it brings the fire. So what happens? What is he saying? What's the Gemara saying? It's saying it's nothing. You filled yourself with air. You let out the air. You didn't do anything. That's what the Gemara seems to be saying. It's nothing. Okay. Then the Gemara continues. Emat mikabile. So again, if you didn't accept the fast, but you just fasted, doesn't count as anything. So if I notice at the end of the day, the meat, knock off one of my fasts from my nidarim off the calendar, no, doesn't count. The Gemara continues. Emat mikabil le. When does a person take on his Kabbalah that he's going to fast the next day? Here's again, Morris, like I said earlier. Me'ba'od yom, Shmuel said. Shmuel said from before the day. Rav amar b'mincha. Rav says at the time of mincha, before the fast. Shmuel omer b'tefilat amincha kavate. B'tefilat amincha. During the mincha prayer. So what's the difference between Rav and Shmuel? One says b'mincha, and one says b'tefilat amincha. Okay, so the machloket of Rav and Shmuel is at which time of Mincha are we accepting this fast? Okay. Now there's a machloket exactly in what way and at what point in the afternoon do Rav and Shmuel mean by their sayings? Okay, but at the same time, there's a slight difference in whether you're talking about Mincha Gedolah or Mincha Ketana. Now look at Rashi. Rashi says b'mincha, bizman mincha, va'afilu b'shuk omer areni mahar ta'anit. It's already arrived the time of Mincha. It doesn't make a difference where I am. It's the afternoon. From the time the afternoon has arrived, I could be playing on my Xbox. I could accept my Taanit. But Shmuel says no. Dafka in the tefillah, in the prayer. When you finish the tefillah, that's when you end. And it also includes the concept. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "B'tfilat mincha b'sofa, tosefet ritzui v'tacharonim ad she'omer hareini machar b'ta'anit. V'dafka nakat mincha p'shun samuch l'tchilat yom ta'anito la'afuk et tfilat yotzer. V'dai kanami b'pasik Shmuel v'pliga derav de'amar b'zman mincha shi'ora yitera." Shmuel says that it should be almost backing up on the beginning of your ta'anit. That's the idea. So you do it at the end of your tefillah, and you're also inserting your tefillah, your ta'anit, to the prayers of the end. Yiratzonim refi, Hashem, accept my tefillot, my words. Vehegyon, the thoughts of my heart should be in front of you. So you're saying, as part of all of those things, I'm accepting a ta'anit. Right. So you're casting it exactly from the context of your prayers.
But why if it's ta'anit for the day, not from the night before, why do you even have to do it from
starting point?
Mincha, not maybe arbit or in the morning early?
I think that's a very good question, and I don't know the answer why specifically it can't be arbit. I'm not sure.
Yeah, like what if you prayed mincha at 1 o'clock?
So
and you're fasting for
Shmuel's intention in tefillat mincha is not only that it has to be in prayer. His intention is to make it later also.
No, it's just machriz.
So he's doing both.
No, but the tefillat mincha you manchiz. You're not starting the fast.
You're just correct. You're just accepting. But I'm just saying that Shmuel. Let's say I prayed mincha gedolah. Let's say I prayed 1:30.
Yeah.
So did I fulfill Rav and Shmuel? You know what? I just said it in the mincha early in the afternoon.
You're just saying.
No, what?
No, that's not Shmuel's intention. Shmuel is telling you to do two things. And that's why Rashi doesn't only say it with your tachanunim, he says also bisofa, where it's close to when you start the ta'anit. Shmuel wanted you to say it later in mincha times. That's what he wanted, close to the evening.
He wanted to make sure that you definitely intended to fast. You weren't going to change your mind.
Okay, yes, that's part of it. I don't think that's all of it. I think that's part of it. Some of the commentators explain that the later on you're saying it, the closer you're to the ta'anit, the more sure you are of what you're going to do. It's not just some idea. Right. You're not going to change your mind because you saw you got hungry, etc., etc. But I think that there's more to it than that as well. Again, I think there's more to it than that. What I don't know specifically is why dafka, it should be the end of mincha, the end of the day, and not dafka, and not by arbit. Because the only thing I'm thinking is that arbit is already considered, since arbit is already called part of the next day, right? So it's already, so to speak, it's not miba'od yom, which Shmuel said earlier, has to be before the day. So arbit is already the beginning of the day, even though you're not fasting from now. Yes. Yeah. Well, if we're posek like Shmuel, then it's halakha. Yeah, we're going to see hilchata like Shmuel, okay? That's what we hold, that a person is supposed to accept their ta'anit in tefillat mincha beforehand.
Yeah, but if they daven mincha by like 1:30 instead of by shkia.
Yeah. No, you would still have been yotzeh Shmuel, but you did not fulfill Shmuel's intention. You would have accepted the fast according to halacha, but that was not Shmuel's intention. That was not the totality of Shmuel's exception. He wanted two things, and you did one of them. Okay? Let's just finish this part. Okay? So the Gemara now says on this concept, Shmuel Rabbi Yosef, Kavate de Shmuel mistabra. It seems likely that Shmuel is correct. Why? Dichtiv Megillat Taanit. In this Megillat Taanit, we already mentioned that they had a scroll called Megillat Taanit that we don't have. Okay. Lahen kol inash, right? Diyaiti alohi mikidmat dena. Therefore, or specifically, any person that came upon him mikidmat dena before this, yiyaser. The language of Megillat Taanit is actually a little bit different because of the style and the place in which it was written. Okay, so the Gemara seems to be saying that in a case if someone had a fast before, he accepted many ta'aniyot on himself, all right, and then it turned out it came upon this fast before a specific holiday, like we found by the mishpacha of Sinav, yiyaser, then it's prohibited. Okay, since the fasts were before the holidays, so the fasts don't continue. Now let's look at Rashi. Rashi says explicitly, he says something very powerful over here. There are certain days of holidays that were included in Megillat Taanit that are minor holidays. But before these, it tells you certain days that you should not have Taanit on those days. But if a person accepted on themselves Taaniyot before that, he accepted 10 or 20 days, and some of these days that he accepted on himself were already part of his fasting. Yaser b'tzilo b'tefilah. He should accept on himself, he should prohibit on himself from Lashon Isur, b'tzilo, from tziloteh, from sali, from his tefillah. And if he did not accept on himself in the mincha beforehand, he can't push off those minor holidays that is listed there. Alma the ikar ta'anit, the main body of the ta'anit, b'tfilat mincha iluya. He has to accept it in the tefillat mincha before. He's not done anything. And in fact, in those scenarios, the holiday would push off the ta'anit as opposed to the other way around. And you see specifically that it says b'tziloteh in his tefillah. So that is a proof like Shemuel from Megillat Ta'anit. My love, so is it not Yaser atzmo b'tzilo, that he prohibits, he puts a Ta'anit on himself only in tefillah? According to this Megillat Ta'anit, it seems like the proof is like Shemuel, and if a person did not do that, then they can't. Then there's no Ta'anit. The Gemara answers, "Lo, there's no proof from there. Why? Yaser atzmo, whether or not he accepted it in the tefillah, it's still asur. Happens to be that the Megillah said that he should do it in that way, but even if not, it would still be asur, would still be a ta'anit, and therefore you can't prove it. So it's, in other words, like we said earlier, there'll be times when the Mishnah will say something and it means it as a halachic exclusion, and sometimes the Mishnah says it in the best or in the ideal way. This is the best way to do it, but you know what? If you didn't do it, that's also fine. Okay, the Gemara then brings out that this is a machloket between the Amoraim. Pligi behar Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon, Berebi. Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon, Berebi argue on this. Chadama Yaser. One of them says Yaser means he's going to make asur. V'chadama Yeaser. The other one says it means he is asur. What does that mean? Mandama Yeser. The one that says Yesar, that he's going to prohibit Kidda Amrina, like we said earlier. If he prohibits himself, if he stops himself by declaring a Ta'anit from Mincha, then he does that, and he does it even during those days. Lemanda Amar Ye'aser, according to the ones that says Ye'aser, he becomes prohibited. Maihi, what does it mean? The Gemara answers according to the Braita. Tanya Megillat Taanit. We learned the Megillah Braita in Megillat Taanit. Kol inish diyaiti aloi mikidmat dana. Anyone who comes upon these fasts, this many fasts that he accepted on himself before the holidays that they said was asur to fast on, Ye'aser, he's not allowed to fast on these days. Ketzad. How do we understand what's happened over here? Okay? Yachid shekibel alav, an individual that accepted on himself a fast, sheni v'chamishi, he fasts on himself Monday and Thursday, shel kol hashana kula, of all the whole year. How many fasts is that? There's 52 Mondays and there's 52 Thursdays. The guy accepted on himself, right, 104 fasts. And on those Mondays and Thursdays, you had yamim tovim haketuvim Megillat Taanit. You had certain minor holidays that appeared in Megillat Taanit that abrogate his ability to fast on those days. Im nidro kodem l'gzeratenu. If he said Monday, Thursday before these minor fasts came into existence, these minor holidays came into existence, then his neder predates the holiday. Yivatel nidro gzeratenu. His neder overrides our gezerah of a holiday. But if our decree of this minor holiday comes before his neder, tivatel gzeratenu et nidro, the opposite happens, and our gezerah overcomes his neder, and he's not allowed to fast on those days, even if he started the fast beforehand. So what does that mean? Let's say in the year 2020, we declared this to be a holiday. But he already made this neder in 2019. He's Mondays and Thursdays. Therefore, he's good. What happens if we made the declaration that everyone is going to celebrate this day in the coming calendar? Then he decides Monday, Thursday. But the day hasn't come yet. So he's already in the Monday, Thursday cycle, but his neder came after the gezerah. So in such a case, then he would not be allowed to fast on that braita. Okay? Now, according to this, if we follow this braita, who does this go like? This goes like according to the Pinyan, according to the Shita of Rav, where it doesn't say that he has to accept it in the mincha tefillah beforehand, because it makes no mention of the tefillah. Okay? Now, the next bit of the Gemara discusses another piece, so we'll continue from here, Be'ezrat Hashem, on Wednesday. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'Amen.